Hi there, this is Federico, and in this video I want to show you the process I've arrived at for combining the mechanical elements and the graphic elements of the pop-up zine I've been creating. I think this process should work regardless of the software that you use, but in my case I'm using Cuddle as my vector drawing software for designing the mechanical parts, and I do the drawings in the iPad app Procreate. And the goal is to be able to combine them precisely so they can be printed and then cut with the digital cutting machine. So I'm going to be showing you that process. On the previous video, I had constructed all the way up to this butterfly mechanism. And on my prototype, I had placed my characters using a strap, which meant that I could add these V-folds to make them pop up, but it made this space on the left too empty. My solution was to angle the strap so I could evenly distribute the characters on the space. So here I have the possum and here the magpie, and I gave these shapes even dimensions that I could replicate on my mockup. So this one is 2 1/4 by 1 1/4, and this one is 2 1/2 by 1 1/2. Now let me show you what the layout looks like. Some of the constraints I had to take into account is that when using the print then cut feature on the Cricut machine, the actual usable area on a US letter size piece of paper is about 9 1/4 by 6 3/4 inches. When you do the print and cut, this black bar gets printed on your page that serves as the registration mark. So based on these dimensions, I had decided that the size of my unfolded page would be 6 1/2 inches. So I tried to lay out everything based on those dimensions. So here you can see my unfolded page, and then at the bottom, all the parts that make up the butterfly. So in order to export these to be used, I added a rectangle on the back. So this rectangle is 6 1/2, which is the width of my page, and 9 1/4, which is the height of the usable area that I have. So this background rectangle is going to determine the size of the image file I'm going to export and use as a reference in Procreate. And I want to have a file in Procreate that is exactly the same proportions. It doesn't have to be the same size. So in order to calculate the proportions, I'm just going to do it here so I can keep it as my notes. So I know the ratio between the width and the height is, if I divide the width 9.25 by the height 6 1/2, I get that ratio. And I know that I want to have a Procreate document size of about 2000 pixels. So that would be my width in pixels. So if that is 2000, then I'm going to calculate my height in pixels as 2000, or the width multiplied by the ratio. So I know that my document size is 2000 pixels by 2846 pixels. Now I'm going to export this PNG file, and then I'm going to move it to my iPad and show you how that looks like in Procreate. So I'm going to create a new document, Canvas, with those dimensions we calculated before. 2000 pixels for the width and 2846 pixels for the height. And I'm just going to check that I have the CMYK profile selected in my case. Then I'm going to create it. And now that I have my canvas, I'm going to insert a photo or the image I exported previously from Cuddle. And I'm going to resize it to 2000 pixels wide. And then using the snapping, I'm going to place it on the center and the top. And I want to make sure that I create other layers for the drawing, because I want to be able to hide my reference layer later to export the image without the reference. And here's a time lapse of the actual drawing. I have to admit I cheated a little bit with that butterfly. I actually traced the reference to get the colors and shape right, then my magpie. And notice this blue outline, then my possum. I used the blue outline later to create a different cutout for those creatures. Then I repositioned them here and I drew some caterpillars on the edges, and I'll show you the next step. So that blue outline I mentioned is because initially I had this square and this triangle as a reference for where I wanted to draw the characters. But once I drew those characters, I actually wanted an outline that matched them more closely. So I made these outlines and I replaced them on my second cut. And I repeated the process where I exported this image and then just moved the characters so they would match the outlines. And at this point, I'm going to grab an SVG file from Codel. So I'm going to go to File, and specifically, I'm going to export the SVG for Cricut, which groups some things and makes life easier. And then I'm going to move over to Design Space, and I'm going to go through the relatively tedious process of uploading the files. So I'm going to hit Upload. So this is my cut file. I just need to select the different operations. So some of them are cuts. These specific ones are scores. That would be a cut. That would be a score. It's labeled red here. It's also a cut. And then I'm going to upload the image file. There is not a lot of processing that needs to happen here. You can just select the simple version, then continue, and then apply and continue. And importantly, need to select the print and then cut. And once it's on the canvas, notice that it's much bigger than the cut. And so at this point, we can change the size to 6.5 inches, which is what I had before, making sure the proportion constraint is clicked. So that would be 6.5. And then I want to align these two sets. So I can go to Align and then Center. And it looks like I don't have the cuts, but they are right behind this image. Once they're aligned, I don't really need the general outline to be cut again. So I'm going to hide it. And the final step is to select everything and hit Attach. Now I can make it. And so from here on, I'm going to print it and show you what it looks like. This is the scoring wheel. Here you can see the machine checking the printed black lines with its sensor to align the graphics to the cut. And this is the cutting blade after the score. Thanks for watching.